The snow fell in thick, silent sheets, blanketing the small village nestled deep within the mountains. Alex had always enjoyed the solitude of winter. The snow, soft and quiet, brought a sense of peace to everything around him. The world seemed to slow down, as though nature itself was taking a deep breath and holding it. But today was different. Today, something felt off. It was late afternoon, and the sun was beginning to dip behind the tall peaks that surrounded the village. Alex pulled his coat tighter around his body and adjusted the scarf over his nose. His boots crunched against the snow as he made his way down the familiar path through the woods. The air was colder than usual, biting at his skin. He noticed how the wind seemed to carry a strange, eerie chill, something that didn't feel natural, even for winter. As he walked, his mind wandered, reflecting on the events of the day. He had just finished helping an elderly neighbor with her groceries, and now he was taking a quick walk before returning home to his warm fireplace. It wasn't anything extraordinary, just another peaceful day in a small village where nothing much ever happened. But today, everything was about to change. Suddenly, he froze in his tracks. In the distance, just beyond the tree line, there was a flicker of light. At first, Alex thought it might have been a reflection from the low-hanging sun. But no, it was too bright. It was too intense. He squinted into the snowstorm, trying to make sense of it. The light was getting brighter, and it was moving. No, it was descending. Something was falling from the sky. His heart began to race, a sudden burst of adrenaline surging through his veins. He took a few cautious steps forward, instinctively drawn toward the strange light. The wind howled, pushing against him as he moved, making it difficult to see. Still, he pushed on. Curiosity, mixed with a strange feeling of urgency, tugged at him. The light was now pulsing, flashing like a beacon, and it was growing closer. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of trudging through the thick snow, Alex reached the edge of the forest. The light was no longer just a distant glow. It was right there, just ahead. His breath caught in his throat as he saw the source of the light. An object, sleek and metallic, was embedded in the snow. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The craft was small, shaped like an egg, with shimmering, silver panels that reflected the snow in a way that made it almost glow. It looked as though it had just landed, the impact creating a small crater around it. The air smelled strange, not like the crisp winter air he was used to, but almost metallic, like a distant storm had come to life. Alex took a cautious step forward, unsure of what to expect. His eyes scanned the craft, and for a moment, he thought it was empty. But then he saw it. A small figure, no larger than a child, lay motionless in the snow next to the ship. It was barely visible, half hidden beneath the snowdrifts, but Alex could make out the faint outline of the figure. He hesitated for only a second before rushing forward, the urgency of the situation now clear. As he approached the figure, Alex's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't human. The child, if it could be called a child, was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Its skin was a soft, pale green, and it had large, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to glow faintly, even in the dim light of the storm. The child was wrapped in a strange, shimmering fabric that seemed to move and change colors like liquid, but it was unconscious, its chest barely rising and falling with shallow breaths. Alex knelt beside the child, his hands trembling as he reached out to touch its arm. The alien child was cold to the touch, colder than any human could possibly be. But something about it stirred a deep instinct within him. He couldn't just leave it here, alone in the snow, about to die in the harsh cold. With all the strength he could muster, Alex carefully lifted the child into his arms, cradling it gently. It was lighter than he expected, and it seemed almost fragile, like it could break with a single wrong move. But the child stirred slightly, a soft, whimpering sound escaping its lips. Alex felt a surge of hope. "You're not alone," he whispered, more to reassure himself than the child. "I won't leave you." He turned to look back at the craft, hoping to find some kind of explanation, but it was still as silent as ever. The wind had picked up, howling through the trees, and the snowstorm had intensified, swirling around them in a violent dance. It was as though the very atmosphere was pushing back, warning him to turn back. But Alex didn't listen. He had to get the child to safety. He carefully made his way back toward the village, moving as fast as the snow would allow. His steps were labored, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The storm was worsening, the snow stinging his face and making it difficult to see. It was like the storm itself had taken on a life of its own, moving faster and more aggressively, as if it were trying to stop him from leaving. His feet were heavy with each step, his body aching from the cold. The alien child was growing colder in his arms, and he could feel the weight of their small, fragile body pressing against him. Every second counted. He had to get to shelter. He had to save it. Alex's thoughts raced. How had the child come to be here? What was it doing in the middle of a snowstorm? Was it lost? Injured? The questions flooded his mind, but there were no answers, only more uncertainty. As he stumbled through the deepening snow, he couldn't help but feel that this wasn't just a chance encounter. This was something much bigger, something that was meant to happen. The storm, the ship, the child, all of it had to mean something. But what? And why was it happening to him? He didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear. He couldn't turn back. Not now. He had to protect the child, whatever it took. Alex's feet were sinking deeper into the snow with every step, the weight of the alien child in his arms growing heavier as the minutes passed. The snowstorm was now in full force, swirling around them in a violent frenzy. The wind howled like an angry beast, biting at his skin and freezing his breath before it could escape his lips. His gloves were wet and stiff, and every inch of his body felt as if it were being slowly engulfed by the bitter cold. He couldn't stop. He couldn't afford to. The child in his arms, so fragile and pale, was slipping in and out of consciousness, its shallow breathing a constant reminder that time was running out. The storm was closing in fast, and Alex had to find shelter before the child's life was snuffed out entirely. Each step felt like a battle, the snow pushing back against him as though it were alive, determined to keep him from reaching the village. Alex's vision was blurred by the relentless snowfall, and he had to squint through the white haze, searching for any sign of shelter. The village was still miles away, hidden somewhere in the heart of the mountain pass, but Alex couldn't see it. His legs burned with exhaustion, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but he kept moving, driven by a sense of urgency that he couldn't explain. He had to keep going. The snowstorm was no longer a natural winter storm. It felt different, as if the cold itself was being controlled by some unseen force. The snow wasn't just falling. It was swirling in sharp, unpredictable gusts, each blast stronger than the last. The wind seemed to follow him, pushing him back, trying to keep him from his destination. It wasn't like any storm Alex had ever experienced. The alien child stirred weakly in his arms, its large, glowing eyes flickering open for a moment, though it seemed disoriented and far too weak to make any sense of the world around it. Alex didn't have the answers. He didn't know what was happening or how to stop the storm, but he knew he had to keep moving. He stumbled forward, his boots slipping in the deep snow, his grip on the child tightening. Every few steps, the snow seemed to shift beneath him, as though the earth itself was shifting to thwart his progress. He gritted his teeth, summoning every last ounce of strength he had. But no matter how hard he tried, the storm just kept getting worse. Suddenly, the wind screamed in a deafening crescendo, and Alex felt something sharp sting his face. He staggered, almost losing his balance as the snow began to fall harder than ever, each flake sharp as ice. He instinctively shielded the child with his body, his heart pounding in his chest. The storm was no longer a simple weather event. It was a force of nature, a living, breathing entity that wanted to destroy them. Alex could feel it in the air. The pressure was mounting. The cold was biting deeper. and the world seemed to close in around him. The snow was becoming like a wall, pushing against him from all sides. He took a deep breath and squinted through the blinding storm. There had to be something. A cabin. A cave. Anything. And then, through the thick blizzard, he saw it. A faint silhouette, a small structure barely visible through the curtain of snow. It wasn't much, just a simple wooden cabin, tucked away at the edge of the forest. Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was his only hope. With renewed determination, he forced his legs to move faster, pushing through the biting cold and deep snow. The wind seemed to be fighting him every step of the way, but Alex ignored it, focusing only on the small cabin ahead. His lungs burned with every breath, and his vision blurred with the cold, but he kept going. He had to get there. He had to save the child. As he neared the cabin, the wind seemed to grow even stronger, as though it were trying to prevent him from reaching safety. The snow whipped around him in chaotic spirals, but Alex kept his focus, forcing himself forward. When he finally reached the cabin, he was nearly out of breath, every muscle in his body screaming in protest. He pushed open the creaky wooden door with all his strength and stumbled inside, collapsing onto the floor. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the freezing storm outside, and Alex's body shuddered with relief as he finally allowed himself to rest. But there was no time to relax. The child in his arms was growing colder, its small body stiffening as if the storm itself was seeping into its very being. Alex looked around the cabin desperately, scanning for something, anything, to help. The room was simple, a small fireplace, a couple of wooden chairs, and a small table. There were no modern conveniences, no supplies, nothing that could help them in their current situation. Except for one thing, the fireplace. Alex rushed over to the hearth and quickly gathered whatever dry wood he could find. His hands were numb and clumsy, but he worked quickly, determined to build a fire that would warm the cabin. He could feel the child's body growing colder with each passing second, its breaths shallow and weak. Once the fire was started, Alex returned to the child, laying it carefully on the small rug in front of the flames. He worked quickly, unbuttoning his coat and wrapping it around the child's fragile body, hoping the warmth from the fire would revive it. But the child remained unresponsive, its skin unnaturally cold, almost frozen. Alex felt panic rise in his chest. What if it was too late? What if he couldn't save the child? If in answer to his unspoken fear, the storm outside raged even more fiercely, the wind screaming as if it were alive. The windows of the cabin shook with each gust, and the door rattled in its frame. It was as if the storm itself was trying to break into the cabin, desperate to finish what it had started. Alex's eyes widened as he watched the child's body twitch, and then, just as he thought all hope was lost, the alien child's large eyes flickered open. They were still faintly glowing, but there was something else in them now. A flicker of life, of recognition. The child was alive. Alex exhaled shakily, relief flooding his chest. The child was weak, too weak to speak, but it was alive. And that was all that mattered. For the first time since he had found the child, Alex allowed himself to relax. He sat back against the wall of the cabin, his body exhausted, his mind spinning with questions he had no answers to. The storm outside continued to howl, but inside the cabin, there was warmth. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, and the alien child, though still fragile, was beginning to show signs of recovery. But Alex knew one thing for certain. The storm outside was far from over. It was only a matter of time before it would return with full force, and they would have to face whatever was controlling it. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The storm outside had calmed slightly, but the wind still howled like a distant wail. The snow that had been battering the small cabin now only fell in a light dusting, but the cold was still biting. Alex sat by the fire, the warmth from the flames slowly returning the feeling to his stiff, aching body. He watched the alien child, whose breathing had steadied, but the child was still too weak to move. Alex had been keeping an eye on the child ever since they arrived at the cabin. The child was small, fragile, and though it had shown signs of recovery, there was something in its eyes that hinted at a deeper mystery. It wasn't just a child. It was something else. Something extraordinary. Suddenly, the child shifted, its eyes opening wide, glowing faintly in the dim light. Alex stood up in alarm. The child's eyes focused on him for a moment, and then it blinked, slowly, as though trying to communicate without words. Alex felt his heart race again, though this time, it wasn't fear. There was something undeniably different about this child, something ancient and powerful. For a moment, they just stared at each other. The child's gaze was penetrating, intelligent beyond its size. It was as though it was searching deep into Alex's soul, trying to understand him. Alex had no idea what was happening. He wasn't even sure how to help, but somehow, the child seemed to be waiting for something. And then it happened. The room suddenly grew colder, and Alex shivered as a cold wave rushed through the cabin. Despite the roaring fire, the child's small hand twitched and then began to glow. Not like the soft, faint glow in its eyes, but a bright, intense light that seemed to fill the room. Alex stepped back, startled by the sudden change. He'd never seen anything like it. The alien child's hand reached out, as though calling for something. The air in the room grew heavy with an energy that Alex couldn't explain. His skin tingled with the sensation, a feeling that both frightened and fascinated him. He felt an overwhelming sense of urgency, as though something was about to happen. Something important. The child's glow intensified, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop even further. The fire sputtered, dimming for a moment, as if the very life of the flames was being drained by the child's power. The child's eyes glowed brighter now, almost blinding, and Alex felt as though he could hear a faint hum, like the sound of distant energy, vibrating through the air. And then, through the intense silence, the child spoke, though not with its voice. It was a sound, but not a sound Alex could hear with his ears. It was more like a thought, a feeling that surged into his mind, sudden and sharp. He could hear the child's words as clear as if it had spoken them aloud, but they were unspoken, communicated directly into his consciousness. "Help me. I need your trust." Alex's heart raced, and he stepped forward, his mind spinning with questions. The voice in his head was not a voice at all, but a message sent directly into his brain. He had no idea how to respond, but somehow, instinctively, he felt that the child was trying to communicate something vital. The power emanating from it was unlike anything Alex had ever felt. "Trust you," Alex muttered under his breath. He couldn't believe it. How could he trust a child he had just met? But as he looked into the child's glowing eyes, something inside him told him that this was important, that whatever was happening right now was far beyond his understanding. This child, this alien being, had the power to change everything. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to the child. "Okay, I'll trust you. But what do you need me to do?" For a long moment, there was no answer. The room grew still, the glowing from the child's hand flickering slightly as if it was waiting. Then, just as Alex thought the moment might pass, the child's hand rose higher, pointing toward the ceiling, and the air seemed to crackle with energy. Suddenly, Alex felt something strange happen. The ground beneath him shifted, as though the very cabin itself was reacting to the child's power. The walls of the cabin groaned, and the wooden beams above creaked. The snow outside began to fall harder again, and Alex could feel the pull of the storm's intensity. But this time, it wasn't just the storm that was growing stronger, it was the child's power. Alex watched in awe as the child's small body seemed to expand, glowing brighter and brighter, its power surging. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The glow in the child's hand faded, and the room grew still again. Alex stood there, stunned. He had no idea what had just happened, but one thing was clear. The child had immense power. It wasn't just a helpless alien. It was a being capable of something extraordinary. The child, exhausted from the outburst, lay back down on the rug, its body trembling slightly from the effort. The glow in its eyes dimmed, but it was still alive. Still there. Alex sat down beside it, watching closely. The storm outside was stronger now, but he knew that whatever was going on inside the cabin was somehow tied to what was happening outside. The child's power wasn't just something it could control. It was something that was connected to the storm itself. It was as if the storm were a living thing, and the child had the ability to influence it, to stop it, or perhaps even make it worse. "Why is this happening?" Alex whispered. "What are you?" The child's eyes opened once more, this time looking directly into Alex's, and once again that voice filled his mind. The storm is not just a storm. It is a weapon, a force that was created to destroy. But it can be stopped. If you trust me, we can stop it together. Alex's heart pounded. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. A weapon, a force of destruction. What kind of weapon was capable of causing such a powerful storm? And why was this child involved? The child's gaze softened, and Alex could see the exhaustion in its eyes. But there was determination there too, an ancient wisdom that went far beyond the fragile form of the child lying before him. This wasn't just a creature from another planet. It was something far more powerful. The storm is sent by those who wish to destroy your world. They do not care for your kind, but I am not one of them. I was sent here to stop them. The voice spoke clearly in Alex's mind, each word carrying the weight of centuries. Alex sat in stunned silence for a long time. The weight of the child's words settled on him like a heavy blanket. His mind raced with possibilities. If this storm was a weapon sent by another alien race, and if the child was here to stop it, then what role did he play in all of this? Together, Alex repeated. How do we stop it together? The child's eyes glowed once more, and this time, Alex felt a surge of warmth, the temperature in the room rising as the child's power activated again. You must help me, the child said simply. You must trust in my power, and together we will use it to stop the storm before it consumes this world. Alex's thoughts were still a whirlwind of confusion and questions, but one thing was clear. He had no choice. The child had already begun this battle, and Alex, for better or worse, was now a part of it. The storm was coming, and it was up to him, and this strange alien child to stop it. With a deep breath, Alex nodded. I'm with you. Let's do this. And with that, the storm outside grew louder, as though in response to their decision. But inside the cabin, Alex and the alien child were ready to face whatever came next. Together. The storm outside howled with renewed fury, its winds shrieking like an untamed beast. But inside the small, humble cabin, the warmth from the fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Alex could feel the heat rising, a strange contrast to the chaos beyond the wooden walls. He sat on the edge of the rug, his eyes fixed on the alien child lying before him. The child was exhausted, but no longer unconscious, its breathing steady, though its small form still seemed fragile. Alex had made his decision. He would help the child, no matter what. The child had come from another world, sent to stop the deadly storm, a weapon designed to destroy everything in its path. The child's power was the key to stopping it, but the child was weak, and Alex, though still unsure of everything, now understood the stakes. This wasn't just about survival. It was about saving an entire world, and possibly the universe itself. Outside, the storm continued to rage. The snow fell in thick, furious sheets, and the winds picked up speed, howling against the cabin as if trying to tear it apart. But Alex knew they had little time left. The storm wasn't just a freak accident or a natural disaster. It was a weapon, and it was getting worse. The alien child's eyes flickered open, glowing faintly once more. Alex looked down at the child, his heart racing. There was something about those eyes, something wise, something ancient, that made him feel as though this moment was a turning point. The child didn't need to say a word for Alex to understand. It was ready. It was time to face the storm. Without saying a word, the child raised its small hand again, and this time, Alex noticed a subtle change. The air in the room seemed to hum with energy. It was as if the cabin itself had become alive, charged with a force that made every hair on Alex's body stand on end. The child's power was pulsing in the air, and Alex could feel it, deep in his bones. The fire crackled louder, and the warmth of the room grew even stronger. The child's eyes glowed brighter, and Alex stepped closer, kneeling down to hold the child's hand. His heart raced, and for the first time in a long while, he felt both fear and hope surge through him simultaneously. He was about to step into something far beyond anything he had ever known, but there was no turning back. Suddenly, the child spoke, though once again, it wasn't with words. It was more like a direct thought, a message sent into Alex's mind, clear and strong. The storm is controlled by the energy of the ice. The cold is their weapon, and they use it to keep us from stopping them. But together, we can fight back. You have the power within you too. You must help me release it. Alex blinked, still trying to process the words. He had the power. He wasn't sure what the child meant, but there was no time for hesitation. The storm outside was relentless, and they were running out of time. I don't know how, Alex said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The child's gaze softened, and for a moment, it looked almost sad, as though it understood Alex's fear and uncertainty. But then, its small hand tightened around Alex's, its touch cold but firm. You have a power inside you. It's your strength, your heart. You must trust it. The storm is not just an enemy. It is a challenge, and together, we can overcome it. Alex stared at the child's glowing eyes, the weight of its words pressing down on him. The child was asking him to believe in something that seemed impossible. How could he fight back against a force so powerful? He was just a human, an ordinary man with no extraordinary abilities. But then, as he looked at the child, this fragile, incredible being from another world, he realized something. The child had already shown him the way. It wasn't about having supernatural strength or abilities. It was about trust. Trust in the child's power, trust in his own courage, and trust in the strength of their bond. Together, they could do something unimaginable. They could stop the storm. Taking a deep breath, Alex closed his eyes and reached out with all his heart. He focused on the warmth in the cabin, the fire that burned bright in front of him, the connection he had felt with the child since the moment they met. He thought about the storm, the destruction it was causing, the people who would suffer if it wasn't stopped. And then something shifted. It wasn't a sudden explosion of energy or a flash of light. It was more like a subtle change, a quiet force that flowed through him. Alex felt it in the air, felt it inside his chest, as though his very heart had become a conduit for something larger. The warmth from the fire seemed to fill his body, merging with the child's power, creating a bond that was more than just physical. It was something deeper, something ancient. The storm outside seemed to notice the change. The wind grew even fiercer, howling louder as if it was angry. But Alex remained calm. He held the child's hand tightly and focused on the feeling within him. He wasn't just trying to stop the storm anymore. He was becoming a part of it. The energy of the storm, the cold, the wind, the power. He could feel it all inside him, as if he had become one with the storm itself. And with that realization, Alex understood what he needed to do. He opened his eyes and looked at the child. The alien's eyes were glowing brightly now, its small body humming with energy. Alex could feel the connection between them, an unspoken understanding that they were in this together, that they would face the storm as one. The child's voice echoed in his mind once more. Now, together. Alex squeezed the child's hand one last time and stood up. His heart was pounding in his chest, but he knew what needed to be done. He stepped toward the door of the cabin, pulling open the creaky wooden door. The storm outside was ferocious, the winds nearly knocking him back as soon as he stepped outside. But Alex held firm, his feet planted firmly in the snow, his body shielded by the child's power. The child's energy seemed to surround him, a glowing aura that protected him from the worst of the storm. Alex reached deep into himself, pulling on the power that now flowed through him. The storm was a weapon, but it was also a challenge, and he wasn't alone. With the child by his side, he would face it. The winds howled, the snow swirled around him. But Alex stood tall. He reached out with his mind, focusing on the storm, on the cold that raged around them. He could feel its fury, its desire to destroy, but he also felt the child's power, a warmth that cut through the cold like a knife. The child's voice spoke once more, calm and clear. Focus. Let the warmth flow through you. Push the storm back. Alex took a deep breath and raised his arms, the energy flowing through him in a powerful surge. He could feel it, like a rush of warmth spreading from his chest outward, filling every part of him. The cold wind tried to push back, to pull him into its grip, but he held his ground. With the child's power guiding him, he focused on the warmth within him, pushing it outward, shaping it into a barrier that would shield them from the storm. And then, just as he thought he couldn't hold on any longer, the storm began to shift. The wind started to slow, the snow lessening. It was as if the very essence of the storm had been disrupted, its power fading in the face of their combined strength. The cold was no longer biting. The storm was losing its grip. Alex took a step forward, and the storm parted before him, a path clearing in the chaos. The child's energy pulsed one last time, stronger than ever, and the storm was finally tamed. The winds died down, the snow settled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was silence. The storm had stopped. Alex looked down at the child, who was still glowing faintly, its eyes now filled with warmth and gratitude. The child had done it. They had done it. Together. Alex smiled, his heart full of relief and joy. The world around them was still, the snow falling softly, as if the storm had never happened at all. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting a gentle light over the land. The world was safe. And as the child looked up at him, its eyes full of gratitude and trust, Alex knew that this moment would stay with him forever. He had been a part of something far greater than himself, a heartwarming rescue that had saved not just one life, but an entire world. The storm was over, and the world, against all odds, was still standing.